In a time when everything seemed to be falling apart, when faith and modernity were at war, one man stared right into the abyss of a godless world, and he didn't flinch. His name was Hillel Zeitlin. He was a thinker, a mystic, and a writer who went on one of the most incredible spiritual journeys of the 20th century.
You know, to really get Zeitlin, you have to understand the kind of impression he made on people. This wasn't some quiet academic hiding in a library. People who met him, like Israel Cohen, described him as this magnetic, almost prophetic figure. You can just feel it in the description, right? He had this presence that just captivated people, like he was a man from another time, grappling with the most modern problems you could imagine.
So, who exactly was this man who had such a profound effect on everyone around him? His influence, it turns out, wasn't just in philosophical circles. He inspired a whole generation of Jewish youth in Poland, and even ended up teaching men who would go on to build a nation.
I mean, the sheer range of his impact is just staggering. Take Yitzhak Sadeh, for example. He was one of the founders of the Palmach, the elite fighting force of pre-state Israel, a serious man of action, a military commander. And he was a student of Zeitlin's. He later said that meeting Zeitlin was the single most important event of his youth. That tells you something, right? Zeitlin wasn't just teaching ideas, he was shaping souls. But what was fueling all this incredible spiritual energy? Well, it all started with a vision, a really terrifying one. It was a vision of what life becomes when you strip away all divine meaning. And for Zeitlin, this wasn't some thought experiment. It was a living horror that he felt he had to escape. This right here is the foundation for his entire life's quest. He looked at a universe without a divine spark and didn't see a neutral, empty space. No, he saw something active, grotesque, a monster, a place of endless, pointless violence and struggle. And he described this world in the most raw, visceral terms imaginable. A world of blood, blood and blood. A chaotic, brutal cycle where life is just a constant, desperate battle for survival with no higher purpose at all. Just an eternal hunger that can never, ever be satisfied. He saw a world with iron skies and copper earth, a place totally devoid of compassion, of mercy, of spirit. Just a cold, hard, unforgiving reality. This was the abyss. This was the nightmare that Zeitlin was determined to find a way out of. But here's the thing. Before he could find his own way out, he first had to show why all the usual paths, simple faith on one side and hardcore atheism on the other, were actually dead ends. He argued that the very tools we use to think about these big questions are, well, fundamentally flawed. Zeitlin's argument here is just brilliant. He says, look, both the devout believer and the committed atheist are basically biased witnesses. The lover of religion, he says, is like someone head over heels in love. They're full of passion, which is great, but they can't possibly be objective. But, he says, the hater of religion is even worse. Their testimony is so corrupted by animosity that any claim they have to being scientific or objective just goes right out the window. For Zeitlin, both were completely trapped by their emotions. Okay, so if our emotions blind us, what about pure cold logic? Well, here, Zeitlin, taking a page from thinkers like Henri Bergson, argued that our intellect has its limits too. He said it's like trying to understand a bird by just measuring its wings and analyzing its feathers. You get a lot of data, sure, a kind of translation of the bird, but you completely miss the actual essence of its flight. He believed that to really know reality, we needed something else entirely: intuition. And that brings us to Zeitlin's truly unique and powerful solution. It's a path out of that dark abyss that doesn't rely on strict rules or pure logic, but instead on a profound, overwhelming, and deeply personal experience. The key to his whole philosophy is this one Hebrew word, heshtomimut. Now, it's usually translated as astonishment, but it is so much more than that. Think of it as a sudden, jarring confrontation with the sheer mystery that you even exist at all. It's that feeling you get when you look up at a sky packed with stars, and you're just filled with this incredible mix of wonder and a kind of holy terror. It's the shock that completely shatters your normal, everyday view of the world. So this experience, this heshtamamut, it becomes the first step on a practical path, almost like a mystic's ladder. It all starts with cultivating that sense of radical astonishment, letting the shock of just being break through your daily grind. From there, you learn to trust your intuitive knowledge, that direct knowing that goes way beyond spreadsheets and analysis.
And finally, if you stick with it, you start to hear what he called the inner voice, this clear internal guide that only shows up when all the chatter of the world finally goes quiet.
And this part is absolutely crucial. Zeitlin was not trying to start a new religion or write a new set of rules. His solution was deeply, radically personal. It was all about each person finding their own way out of the darkness by building a direct, unfiltered connection with the great mystery at the very heart of reality. In the end, Hillel Zeitlin's life and his philosophy would collide in one of history's darkest moments. This is where his answer to a world without God was put to the absolute ultimate test. As the nightmare of the Holocaust consumed the Warsaw Ghetto, that monster Zeitlin had always envisioned, that world of senseless violence and hearts of stone, it became horrifyingly real. And it was right there, on the way to the death camps, that his entire life's work came together in one final, unforgettable act. According to people who were there, as he was being marched towards the trains that would take him to Treblinka, Zeitlin was wrapped in his prayer shawl, clutching the Zohar, the most important book of Jewish mysticism. But he wasn't quiet. He turned to the crowd around him and cried out for them to resist, to defend themselves. You see, this final act was the ultimate expression of his philosophy. It was this incredible fusion of deep, mystical faith and a courageous, defiant stand against that monstrous, godless world. He faced the absolute worst of humanity, not with quiet resignation, but with a sacred protest that embodied both the spirit and the will to live.
So, Hillel Zeitlin's story leaves us with this huge question, doesn't it? In our own time, which is so full of noise, distraction, and its own kinds of chaos, can we still find that deep sense of astonishment? Can that sudden confrontation with the mystery of being still give us an anchor in a world that so often feels adrift and meaningless? It's a question he answered with his entire life.